Chapter 8, Arkturius-Five, Thrusters Fired. The diamond-shaped spacecraft hurled like a lightning bolt towards the planet's surface. It was small, white and sleek, with a dome-shaped cockpit large enough to house one occupant. Just when collision seemed imminent, the spaceship reared from behind and shot off, hurling dust in its wake. The craft moved close to ground level, dancing its way through the canyons and intricate rock formations that pocketed this strange world. Suddenly, laser fire erupted from behind, narrowly missing the stern of the spaceship. The small spacecraft began taking evasive maneuvers, swaying left to right and twisting its way around the rock formations. The pursuer pressed on, commanding a small navy blue spacecraft that was distinctively shaped. A large circular cockpit featured in the center, with long wings to either side that supported thrusters and weaponry. The weapons continued to unleash an unrelenting stream of plasma in the direction of its target. A small opening revealed itself in one of the rock formations ahead. The little spaceship increased its speed as it rocketed towards this opening, rolling and jolting from side to side to escape ruin. The spacecraft behind was close on its tail. Finally, the fleeing spacecraft entered the opening in the canyon, a long tunnel that extended through to the other side. It roared its way through this canyon. The pursuer continued to give chase, moving towards this opening. Its wings, however, were too wide, and as it attempted to enter, they collided with the rock face, snapping off, and the remaining sections of the spacecraft hurled into the rock face, exploding on impact. The canyon reverberated fiercely with the explosion, which spewed fire down the tunnel towards the fleeing spaceship. Suddenly, the rocks inside the tunnel began collapsing. The cascading rocks quickly gained speed on the spacecraft. Soon, they were within arm's length of the craft. The spaceship gave a sudden burst from its thrusters and, seemingly impossibly, shot its way out from the tunnel. The thrusters cooled and the spaceship reduced to moving at a more peaceful pace, gliding about the canyons. It began ascending over a small hill and then re-entered further rock formations on the opposite side. This peaceful glide was punctuated by the laser fire of a newcomer, commanding a spacecraft identical to the previous. This time, caught by surprise, the fleeing spacecraft took a hit on its stern wing, leaving a large hole in its metallic surface. The damaged spaceship resumed its escape. The thrusters roared into life once more, and it began to move through the convoluted canyons. Yet something was wrong. Its movements were lagging and non-responsive since sustaining damage. The pursuing spacecraft loomed above, unable to fit within the nooks of the canyon. It fired from above each time that opportunity struck. Finally, the diamond-shaped spaceship exited the maze of tunnels in the canyon into a wider opening. The pursuing craft swooped like a falcon, unleashing a volley of plasma onto its prey. Two of the shots found their mark on the stern wing. Now structurally compromised with only one remaining wing, the fleeing spacecraft began to spin rapidly. The craft steadied momentarily as its pilot grappled to rein it under control. It ejected a round object from behind which immediately exploded, filling the entire environment with a hazy smog, which enveloped the spacecraft behind. The fleeing spacecraft hit the planet and began to skid rapidly across its surface. It came to a screeching halt. Instantly, the pursuing spacecraft emerged from the cloud of smoke. Previously flying blind, its pilot did not see the labyrinthine rock formation it had been flying towards. The rock formation caught the left wing of the spacecraft, cleaving it whole. The pursuing spacecraft now hurtled towards the planet's surface, colliding violently. Its remaining wing snapped, and the bulbous cockpit soared forth, aggressively colliding repeatedly against the planet. Finally, the cockpit smashed into a rocky wall, embedding itself deep into the canyon face. It remained motionless, billowing copious amounts of smoke into the air. The scene remained suspended, silent, motionless, aside from the billowing smoke. Suddenly, the cockpit of the more intact spaceship opened. From it, a man in white battle armor emerged. His face swept in all directions as he assessed the situation. He unholstered a pistol from his armor and sprinted towards the source of the billowing smoke at breakneck speed. The embedded cockpit was dented and cracked severely. Using his free hand, he wrenched at a small gap and created an opening, revealing its occupant, a creature with a disproportionately large-sized head compared to its body. Its head had 3 bulbous formations, each with a slanted eye. A screeching sound pierced the silent air, consuming it entirely. The man in white armor dropped his pistol and fell to his knees. He brought his hands to his head, shook violently, and fell to the ground where he began to writhe as if being tortured. The screeching intensified. The outermost sides of the bulbous creature's head pulsed like the ripples of a wave. Slowly, the man pushed himself up with his hands. Shaking vehemently from all fours, he gripped the handle of his pistol. In a split second, the man jumped from the ground, leveled his pistol with both hands, and unleashed a plasma charge into the damaged cockpit. The screeching sound ceased, replaced with a sizzling coming from the remnants of the spacecraft, where the limp form of the creature now had a visible hole in its head. The man fell once more to the ground, letting his body extend and lay flat on the planet's surface. He remained in this position as minutes passed by, his body rising and falling with each labored breath he took. A menacing growl sounded across the canyon landscape. The armored man shifted his head in all directions. Unable to spot the source, he returned to his feet, fetched his pistol, and pushed his back up firm against the canyon wall. Time passed. The growl sounded once more, and at this moment, 10 life forms lurched over the canyon, landing on the opposite end of the clearing. They were large and menacing, with a dark hue to their skin. Each was brandishing a rifle, aimed at the lone soldier on the opposite end of the clearing. Rankello was petrified. His feet remained glued in place. His breathing became quick and shallow from within his space armor. His opponent was naturally swifter, and besides, he could not see anywhere from where he could escape. He leveled his pistol against the newcomers, darting his aim from one to the next, his trigger finger at the ready. The creatures came to a halt only meters from Rankello. The scene was suspended in time, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. One of the creatures let out a triumphant roar. Rankello felt his heart sink. This was the end. An explosion sounded, then another. The surface rock was wrenched from its resting place by the vehement force. 6 of the foes were consumed in the explosion, and 2 more were caught by laser fire from Rankello. The remaining 2 were distracted as they looked for the source of this explosion. Rankello seized his moment of opportunity. He sprinted with the force of a Spartan as parts of the canyon beside him erupted with laser fire from his attackers. A voice rang through his headset.
"Don't worry, Rankello. I have you covered."
The clearing opened up and expanded into an array of maze-like passages. With a moment's respite, he searched for the source of the explosion and the voice comm. He knew that voice. A green, diamond-shaped spacecraft shot past his peripheral vision.
"Rankello, are you still there with me?" "Still breathing. For now, at least."
He picked up the voice in his comms. This time he recognized it, Nalago.
"I'm mopping up these last 2 Gorgens. Hold tight. Can you put out your beacon? We have other reinforcements in the area."
Rankello turned his tracer on. As the spacecraft somersaulted and unloaded a fury of plasma, another 10 Gorgens rounded the corner. There was barely time to duck for cover before the space that he had previously occupied exploded in a ball of plasma.
"You've got company, R3." "No kidding."
Rankello ducked and darted, firing deterring shots at his foe. He retreated deeper into the convoluted canyon, using the intricate surroundings for cover. One of the shots found its mark, hitting one of the creatures in its head. Plasma erupted from the skies as the diamond-shaped spacecraft swooped through. Each shot missed.
"It won't be easy to cover you in that cliff face."
Rankello fired once more, killing another of the brutish creatures. The survivors gave out a fierce howl. Rankello could not react in time to avoid the oncoming plasma. The shields on his shoulder armor plate absorbed the brunt of the blow, but it still penetrated. He ducked for cover before the ensuing plasma hit. From there, he assessed the damage. His left arm was weak and had poor mobility. He jumped from his place of refuge and darted further from his foes, weaving deeper into the maze. He fired. The plasma missed by a mile. Firing with his non-dominant hand was going to be a challenge. He rounded a corner and sprinted a short distance. They were gaining on him. Suddenly, 4 of Rankello's comrades sprang from beneath the nearby rocks. They leveled their weapons and fired. 4 of the Gurjans dropped their weapons and fell to the ground.
Good to see you in one piece, Rankello,
said one of the newcomers. There was barely time to rejoice before the remaining forces were locked in a gruesome fight, with plasma hurling across the canyon from all directions. Every now and then the ship from above attempted to make a flyby and fired into the fray. Not before long the ground began to rumble. Then it shook. A gargantuan life form rushed into the battlefield from the end of the foes. It bounded on all 4s, knocking 2 of the Gurjans in its wake. It was easily 5 times their size, muscular and Hulk-like, and it was moving straight for Rankello. Rankello felt a strange presence in his head. He fired a shot at the newly arrived enemy. It preempted his aim perfectly, jumping to evade almost before he fired. He tried again. The same happened. This time he turned to run, deeper into the canyon. The monster gave chase, bounding after him. The canyon space became even more convoluted. As he wedged his way through narrow walk spaces, he could hear the intense breathing of his foe. Moving down a narrow pass, he turned to look behind. The creature was in his sight. He fired. Again his actions were preempted. The plasma was dodged with ease. In between loud, labored breaths, the creature yelled with a booming voice.
I feel your fear, human.
Rankello pushed deeper on, rounding a corner.
I sense your thoughts.
The presence in Rankello's head intensified, like someone boring deep into his skull. He brought his hand to his helmet as the pain began to overwhelm him.
You want to run to hide, but I see you. I will find you.
The surroundings opened up. Rankello ran for cover over by a large rock in the clearing. He peered from the side of the rock.
Come out and fight. Die with dignity.
His heart was pounding. His senses sharpened. This time the creature spoke, but it was only a soft whisper.
Let me rip you. Let me kill you.
He could not tell where the sound had come from. It seemed to be originating from within Rankello's skull. The ground from behind shook suddenly as a large mass fell and landed behind Rankello. He swung around just in time to see the brute. He unloaded plasma into its chest, but all it did was make the brute howl. It lifted Rankello by his neck with one hand and smashed his back into the canyon wall. The pain was excruciating. His neck and back seared in agony. Warning alarms blared in his helmet as his armor began to fail from damage.
Rankello! Rankello! I can't get a clear shot. You have to shake him.
The sound in his helmet grew more distant. Growling menacingly, the brute bore its eyes deep into his, bringing its face so it was only inches away. The presence in his head was now overwhelming. He could sense nothing else, consuming him, eating him alive. The pain in his neck and back was minuscule in comparison. Death by physical means was preferable. Plasma erupted. It enveloped the brute from all angles. Stunned, it dropped Rankello. The searing, trickling sensation in his head eased a little, and he fell to the ground. The brute began lashing at the air as plasma pounded it from all directions. Rankello rose slowly to his feet. Just as he did, he was caught by the flailing arm of the brute. It smashed him at full force, and he was flung through the air. His head collided with the canyon, and his limp body fell to the ground.